What if the freedom you've been chasing is the very chain that keeps you bound? We live in a time where leaving home, cutting ties, and proving that we can make it alone is almost celebrated as the ultimate achievement. But deep down, every person who runs away from love and guidance discovers something far different from what they imagined. At first it feels like liberty. Soon it feels like emptiness. And the tragedy is that most of us realize it only when the price has already been paid. This is not just the story of a young man who wasted his inheritance centuries ago. This is the story of our generation, the restless pursuit of independence without responsibility, the endless hunger for pleasure without purpose, the blind escape from order into chaos, only to find ourselves more enslaved than when we began. We convince ourselves that happiness is out there, somewhere beyond the walls of discipline, tradition, or family. Yet when the illusion shatters, we face the silence of our own choices. But here is the real question. When you've wandered too far, when your mistakes echo louder than your hopes, when you're standing in the ruins of your own decisions, is there still a way back? Or worse, if you've stayed home all along, obeyed all the rules, carried the weight of duty, but feel no joy, is it possible that you too are just as lost? The parable of the prodigal son is not a simple moral tale. It is a mirror. It shows us who we really are, not only when we rebel, but also when we think we're righteous. It uncovers our desires, our pride, our brokenness, and our desperate need for grace. And the deeper we dive into this story, the more we see that the path to freedom is not running away from the Father, but running toward Him. The younger son stood at the edge of the fields one evening, watching the servants finish their work. His father's house was large, the storehouses full, the family respected in the entire village. Yet in his chest burned a restlessness he could not silence. Every day felt the same. Every command from his father felt like a chain. He had food, shelter, and a name that carried honor, but he longed for the unknown, for the thrill of life far beyond the walls of tradition. That night he whispered to himself, "There must be more than this. Why should I wait until my father dies to taste life on my own terms? The world is waiting, and I am wasting my years here." His mind was set. He rehearsed the words he would speak, though his stomach tightened each time he thought of them. "Father, give me my share of the inheritance." The thought of speaking it out loud felt like betrayal, yet desire drowned out the voice of conscience. At dawn, he found his father walking through the courtyard. The old man's face was weathered with years of labor and wisdom. He looked at his son with the quiet affection only a father knows, but the boy did not see it. His heart was fixed on escape. With trembling lips, he broke the silence. "Father, I want my share, the portion that belongs to me. Please give it to me now." The words pierced the father like a blade. To ask for the inheritance while he was still alive was to say, "I want what you have, not who you are. Your death would serve me better than your presence." Yet the father did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He only looked at his son with sorrow that reached deeper than anger ever could. Then, against all reason, he granted the request. He divided the estate, gave the younger son what he demanded, and watched him walk away. The boy left with pockets heavy but heart light, convinced that at last he was free. Days turned into nights filled with laughter, wine, and music. He found companions who praised his generosity, women who smiled at his wealth, and strangers who called him friend as long as the coins kept flowing. Each morning he woke with the thrill of having no master but himself. Each night he silenced the faint echo of his father's voice by drowning it in pleasure. But the coins did not last. And when the last one slipped through his fingers, the world that had seemed so open shut its doors. Friends disappeared. The music stopped. The women's smiles faded into indifference. He wandered through the streets with empty hands and an emptier heart. Hunger gnawed at his belly, and shame whispered in his ear, "This is the freedom you wanted." In desperation, he found work feeding pigs in the fields of a foreign land. He bent down into the mud, his clothes torn, his skin covered with filth. The stench of the animals clung to him, and hunger drove him to stare at the husks they ate. He longed to fill his stomach with the food of swine, but no one offered him even that. And there, in the dirt, he remembered. He remembered the servants in his father's house who never lacked bread. He remembered the warmth of the table, the abundance of the storehouse, the kindness of a father who never withheld. He whispered to himself with tears burning his eyes, "I will arise and go to my father. I will say, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.'" Back in the fields, the older brother watched everything unfold. He had not left. He had not demanded. He rose early each day, carried the burdens of the farm, obeyed every order without question. Yet in his chest grew another kind of bitterness. He looked at his younger brother with contempt. "Foolish dreamer," he muttered under his breath. "You will reap what you have sown." And when news spread of his brother's ruin, the older son felt no pity, only cold satisfaction. He chose this path. Let him rot in it. But the father, he never stopped waiting. Each morning he walked the road that stretched toward the horizon. Each evening he searched the distance, hoping for the faint silhouette of his lost child. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, yet his eyes never tired of scanning the horizon. His heart ached, but his love remained unbroken. One day, as the sun lowered and the air shimmered with heat, he saw a figure stumbling on the road, thin, bent, barely recognizable, yet the father knew instantly. His heart surged, and he ran. He did not walk with dignity, nor wait for the son to come and bow. He ran, robes gathering dust, tears streaming, arms open wide. The son collapsed at his feet, beginning his rehearsed confession. "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father would not let him finish. He lifted him from the ground, kissed his filthy face, and shouted to the servants, "Bring the best robe and put it on him. Place a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Kill the fatted calf. Tonight we celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and now is found." The sound of music filled the house that night, laughter echoing through the courtyard. Yet outside, the older brother stood in the dark, his arms crossed, his heart burning with anger. When he heard of the feast, he refused to go in. "All these years I have served you. I never disobeyed. Yet you never gave me even a young goat to celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who squandered everything on prostitutes, returns, you kill the fatted calf for him." The father came out once more. His voice was tender but firm. "My son, you are always with me. All that I have is yours." But we had to celebrate and rejoice, for your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and now is found. And there, the story hangs in silence. The younger son restored, the father rejoicing, the older son bitter, unwilling to enter. The parable forces us to ask, who are we in this moment? The runaway who squandered grace? The faithful one, who serves without joy? Or will we step into the feast, into the Father's love, no matter how undeserved it may seem? The night after the feast, the younger son sat in his old room, staring at the robe draped over the chair and the ring on his finger. He ran his thumb over the metal again and again, as if to convince himself it was real. His body still carried the smell of pigs, though the bathwater had washed away the dirt. His heart was torn between relief and disbelief. "Why did he run to me?" he whispered. "Why didn't he condemn me? How can a father embrace the son who wished him dead?" He closed his eyes and remembered the road that led him here. The sting of hunger, the mocking faces of those who once called him friend, the hollow echo of empty promises. He remembered kneeling in the mud, rehearsing words of shame, imagining himself reduced to a servant. Yet the moment he saw his father's face, the speech dissolved on his lips. Grace interrupted shame. Love silenced self-condemnation. In the courtyard, servants were still clearing the remains of the celebration. The laughter of the household had faded into the night, but the joy lingered like the scent of roasted meat in the air. The father walked slowly among them, thanking each with a gentle word. His steps were heavy with age, but his heart was light with joy. He had waited so long, and now his son was home, but not everyone shared his joy. The older son sat outside the house, alone under the stars. His hands were calloused, his clothes stained with sweat from the fields. His jaw was clenched, his heart filled with resentment. "All these years," he muttered, "all these years I've obeyed, labored, sacrificed, and what do I have to show for it? Not once did he throw a feast for me. Not once did he celebrate my faithfulness. But this son of his, this reckless fool who wasted everything, returns with nothing, and suddenly he is treated like royalty." He picked up a stone and hurled it into the dark, listening to the echo fade. His voice grew louder, angrier. "Why should I rejoice? Why should I enter a house that mocks my loyalty? Let them celebrate his shameful return. I will not join them." The father approached, the light of the torches casting long shadows on the ground. He saw his eldest seated on the earth, and his heart ached once more. He had run to one son that day, and now he would walk to the other. Kneeling beside him, the father placed a hand on his shoulder. "My son," he said softly, "why do you sit here in anger while your brother is restored?" The older son turned, his eyes burning. "Because I am forgotten. Because my obedience has earned me nothing but silence. Because you celebrate sin more than faithfulness. Tell me, Father, what is the reward for loyalty if rebellion wins the feast?" The father did not flinch at the sharpness of the words. He looked at him with patience, the same patience he had shown the one who wandered. "My son, you are always with me. You have lived in my house, eaten at my table, walked under my roof. All that I have has always been yours. The fields you work, the flocks you tend, the land you inherit. It has never been in question. But tonight is not about wages. It is not about who deserves more. It is about resurrection. Your brother was dead and now lives again. He was lost and is found. Should we not rejoice?" The older son looked away, unable to answer. His father's words exposed the wound in his heart, a wound deeper than resentment. He realized that he had served his father not out of love, but out of duty. He had worked like a servant, not lived like a son. And though he had never left home, he too had been far away. The night grew quiet, broken only by the wind through the olive trees. The father stood and extended his hand. "Come, my son. The house is warm. The feast is not yet over. Will you enter?" The parable does not tell us his choice. It leaves the story unfinished, as if the ending must be written in our own lives. Will we enter, or will we remain outside? Will we cling to pride, or surrender to grace? This is where the story shifts from narrative to revelation. The younger son teaches us the cost of rebellion. His fall shows us that freedom without the Father is slavery, that abundance without wisdom becomes poverty, that pleasure without restraint ends in ruin. But his return shows us something greater, that repentance is not born from fear of punishment, but from the memory of love. He returned because he remembered his Father's kindness, not because he feared his Father's wrath. The older son teaches us another truth, one we often overlook. You can live in the Father's house and still be lost. You can work faithfully, yet miss the joy of relationship. His resentment reveals a heart that obeyed the law, but never tasted grace. He believed his service had earned him status, yet he missed the greater gift, that he had always been a son, not a servant. Both brothers were lost, though in different ways, one through open rebellion, the other through hidden pride. One ran from the Father's house, the other remained outside the Father's heart. Both needed grace. Both were called sons. Both were pursued by the Father. And what of the Father? He is the heart of the story. He is the figure who breaks the expectations of culture. In that time, no man of honor would run to meet a disgraced son. Dignity demanded distance. Yet this Father gathers his robes and runs, because love outruns shame. He embraces the filthy, restores the broken, and interrupts the confession of guilt with the gift of restoration. His love is not logical, not earned, not balanced by human standards. It is extravagant, scandalous, unexplainable. The Father also steps into the anger of the older son. He does not scold or reject him. He goes out, meets him where he stands, and invites him into joy. He reminds him of his place, his inheritance, his belonging. Even the bitter son is pursued with compassion. This is the turning point of the parable. It teaches us that no matter how far we go in rebellion or how close we stay in resentment, the Father seeks us out. He runs to meet us in shame. He walks to meet us in anger. He does not wait for us to fix ourselves before embracing us. His love precedes our repentance, and his grace covers both the rebel and the righteous. Now the story presses against us. Where do we see ourselves? Are we the younger son, returning with shame and hoping for crumbs, only to be embraced with honor? Or are we the older son, standing outside with arms crossed, refusing to enter because grace feels unfair? Or perhaps we are both at different times, running away in rebellion or standing apart in pride. But the Father's call is the same. Come in, the feast is ready. My love is enough. The parable leaves us with a choice, not just to admire the story, but to decide our response. Will we step into the house of grace, or remain outside in the cold of resentment? Will we let the Father's love embrace us, or will we cling to our pride? The story is unfinished because it is waiting for us to finish it with our lives. The story of the prodigal son seems simple at first glance. A young man leaves, wastes everything, and comes back. But the power of the parable is not only in what is said, but in what is hidden between the lines. Each action, each silence, each detail holds layers of meaning that speak to us even now. To grasp it fully, we must slow down and step inside the world Jesus described. Imagine the moment the younger son demanded his share. In that culture, such a request was more than greed. It was shame. It was to say, "Father, you are as good as dead to me. Give me what I want now." The crowd listening to Jesus would have gasped at this audacity. Every expectation of the time demanded that the father rebuke the boy, even strike him, and drive him from the house for his dishonor. Yet the father does not resist. He divides the inheritance, letting the son walk away. Why? Because love, to be real, must allow freedom. The father could have forced him to stay, but love never forces. Love allows choice, even when the choice breaks the heart. And here lies the first layer. God does not chain us to his will. He allows us to walk away, not because he does not care, but because true relationship requires freedom. The son leaves with wealth in his pocket, and at first, life seems generous. Friends gather around him. Women smile at him. He tastes every pleasure money can buy. Yet beneath the laughter lies a truth we all know. When your value is measured only by what you possess, the moment it fades, so do the people. The story teaches us that false friends are bought with silver but vanish in silence when the silver is gone. Another hidden layer appears in the famine. It is not merely that the son wasted his wealth. The famine strikes the land, a crisis he could not control. Here the parable reveals another truth. Life does not only collapse from our mistakes, but also from circumstances beyond us. The boy's hunger was both the fruit of his choices and the weight of a broken world. Jesus, in telling this, reminds us that ruin is not only about guilt, it is also about fragility. No matter how strong we imagine ourselves, a famine can strip us bare. Now picture the young man among the pigs. For a Jewish listener, this detail was shocking. Pigs were unclean animals, despised, avoided. To feed them, to live among them, was the lowest humiliation. The boy had not only lost wealth, he had lost honor, identity, dignity. He was lower than the animals he fed. Yet it is here, in the filth, that clarity comes. The memory of his father's goodness pierces the fog of shame. Notice this detail. It was not fear of punishment that brought him home. It was the memory of love. He thought, "My father's servants eat better than this. My father is generous even to those who are not sons." Repentance begins, not in terror, but in recalling grace. That is a truth hidden within the parable. Love awakens return. Then comes perhaps the most dramatic image, the father running. To us, the act may seem touching, but in that culture, it was scandalous. Elderly men of honor did not run. To run, he would have to gather his robes, exposing his legs, an undignified act that would shame him in front of the community. Yet he runs anyway. Why? Because love is willing to bear shame to cover the shame of another. This is a picture of God himself, who endured shame on the cross to restore us. The Father humiliates himself so that his Son may stand in dignity again. And then notice, the Son begins his confession. He speaks of sin, of unworthiness, of his plan to become a servant. But the Father interrupts. He will not let him finish. He calls for a robe, the best robe, likely his own. He places a ring on his hand, a symbol of authority, restoring him not as a servant but as a son. He gives him sandals, for servants went barefoot while sons wore shoes. Every gesture is restoration. He does not merely forgive, he reinstates. This is another hidden truth. God does not bring us back to the outer edges of his house. He places us at the center, fully restored. The older brother's reaction reveals yet another layer. He hears the music, the laughter, the dancing, and his heart hardens. He refuses to go in. His anger is not against his brother only, but against his father. "All these years I have served you," he says, "and never disobeyed, yet you never gave me even a young goat." Do you hear his words? He sees himself as a servant, not as a son. He obeyed, yes, but without joy, without intimacy. He believed love was earned through labor. And when grace was given freely to another, it exposed his resentment. Here is the layer many miss. Both sons are lost. One is lost in rebellion, the other in self-righteousness. One sought freedom away from home, the other sought control within it. Both misunderstood the father's love. Both needed grace. The father had to run to the younger, and he had to walk out to the older. The parable shows us two ways of being far from God, through reckless sin or through prideful obedience. And it shows us one way home, through the Father's love. And then, the silence. The story ends without telling us if the older son entered the house. Jesus leaves it open, because the choice is ours. Will we enter, or will we remain outside? Will we join the feast, or cling to resentment? The parable is unfinished because it is meant to be finished in our lives. There is one more hidden layer. Notice the absence of the mother. In a story about family, her silence is striking. Why? Perhaps because the focus is not on human family alone, but on the Divine Father. The story lifts our eyes to God Himself, the true source of love, the one whose embrace restores rebels and the righteous alike. The absence sharpens the presence. The Father stands alone, unshaken, unchanging, waiting for His children. The parable is not about two sons only. It is about every one of us. It is about the restless heart that seeks joy in rebellion, and the proud heart that seeks value in obedience. It is about the famine that strikes all lives, the shame that covers all wanderers, and the pride that poisons all faithful hearts. And above it all, it is about the Father whose love outruns shame, interrupts guilt, restores dignity, and invites us into joy. The hidden layers remind us, grace is scandalous, love is costly, and the feast is waiting. The only question is whether we will enter. The parable of the prodigal son is not locked away in the past. It is not a story reserved for ancient fields or distant lands. It is alive here and now, reflected in our lives, our culture, our choices. When Jesus told it, He was not merely painting the picture of one family. He was exposing the reality of the human heart, then and now. If we dare to listen closely, we will find ourselves inside this story. Consider the younger son in the modern world. He is the teenager who cannot wait to leave his parents' home, convinced that independence equals happiness. He is the college student who rejects the faith of his childhood, chasing every new philosophy that promises freedom. He is the adult who throws away relationships, responsibilities, and commitments for the thrill of self-indulgence. In our time, the younger son might not walk away with coins in a pouch. Instead, he may take his inheritance in the form of opportunities, education, talent, or even health. He spends them recklessly, convinced the supply will never run out. He parties through the nights, chases attention on social media, indulges in addictions, lives beyond his means, and calls it life. But when the money runs out, when the body breaks, when the applause fades, the hunger remains. Just like the son who stared at the pig's food with empty eyes, he too reaches the point where he whispers, "What have I done to myself?" Now turn your eyes to the older brother in our time. He is the one who never left the church pew, who never rebelled outwardly, who obeys every visible rule. Yet inside, his heart grows bitter. He serves, but with resentment. He sacrifices, but with calculation. He measures his worth not by love, but by comparison. When he sees someone broken come back to faith and be welcomed with joy, his chest tightens. Why should they be celebrated? I have been faithful all along, and no one claps for me. He may never waste a dollar or miss a prayer meeting, but his soul is starved for joy. He does not see himself as a beloved son, but as an overlooked servant. In truth, he too is lost, though in a different way. The story calls us to honesty. Who are you in this moment? Perhaps you are the runaway, ashamed of your past, convinced that God will never welcome you again. You think you must earn your way back, working like a servant until you deserve to be a son again. Or perhaps you are the older brother, bitter that your sacrifices seem unnoticed, angry that grace is given to those you believe do not deserve it. Or maybe you have lived both roles, sometimes fleeing in rebellion, other times resenting in pride. The parable shows us that whichever son you resemble, the Father still comes for you. And here is the piercing truth. Modern culture pushes us toward both errors. It encourages us to be like the younger son, chasing freedom without boundaries, consuming pleasure without restraint, defining success by wealth, beauty, or recognition. At the same time, it pushes us toward the older brother's mindset, measuring ourselves by achievements, boasting, indiscipline, comparing our worth to others, convinced we are more deserving. Both paths end in emptiness. Both lead away from love. The Father's invitation, however, breaks both illusions. He says to the rebel, "You are not too far gone. I run to meet you, not with condemnation, but with embrace." And he says to the proud, "You are not forgotten. All I have is already yours. You have always been my child, not my servant." In one story, Jesus dismantles two lies, that freedom comes from rebellion and that value comes from performance. In their place, he gives us one truth. True life is found only in relationship with the Father. Think of what this means today. To the one struggling with addiction, this story says, "You are not beyond grace." To the one drowning in guilt, it says, "Your Father runs to you before you finish your confession." To the one weary of serving without joy, it says, "Stop living as a servant. Remember you are a son, a daughter, already loved." To the one who resents others' blessings, it whispers, "Do not miss the feast. Joy is yours too if you will enter." The modern application is also communal. Our churches must learn to mirror the Father, not the older brother. Too often we celebrate those who never stumble while shaming those who return in brokenness. Too often we treat repentant prodigals as second class, forgetting that the Father clothes them in robes, not rags. If our communities do not rejoice with heaven when the lost come home, then we have missed the heart of the Father. Likewise, if we only honor the obedient but ignore their hidden bitterness, we fail to call them into joy. The feast is for both, the repentant rebel and the faithful yet resentful. And beyond church walls, this story speaks to families. Parents waiting for children who have drifted far. Siblings carrying resentment toward one another. Loved ones who feel betrayed, abandoned, or unseen. The parable gives us a model of love that is both patient and costly. The Father did not chase the Son into the far country, but he never stopped looking to the horizon. He did not disown the older son in anger, but went out to him in compassion. Families fracture in both ways, through rebellion and through bitterness. But healing begins when love meets both with grace. This story even reaches into our own hearts at the deepest level. Sometimes we run from God openly, chasing desires we know will not last. Other times, we sit in the house of faith, yet our hearts are cold and joyless. In both cases, the Father's voice calls us home, not to servitude, not to slavery, but to sonship. And here is the ultimate challenge of the parable. Will you enter the feast? The younger son did. The Father rejoiced. The older son stood outside, arms crossed, unwilling to join. Jesus leaves the ending open because he is asking you to finish it. Will you let go of shame and step into grace? Will you release pride and step into joy? The story is not finished because your story is still being written. The application is this. Every day we are writing the last chapter of the parable with our own choices. Every day we decide whether we remain in the far country, return in humility, or stay outside in bitterness. Every day the Father stands at the door, calling us into the feast. The only question is whether we will enter. When Jesus told the parable of the prodigal son, he was not offering entertainment. He was not simply spinning a tale to pass the time. He was laying a mirror before every heart, forcing his listeners, and now us, to confront who we truly are, where we truly stand, and what choice we will make in the presence of the Father's love. And when we step back from the details, the emotions, the dialogues, the feasts, and the resentments, one truth emerges with a clarity that cannot be ignored. The Father's love is greater than both rebellion and pride, and everything in our lives hinges on whether we accept it. Think of the younger son once more. His story teaches us that shame is not the end. He wasted everything, ruined his name, insulted his father, and ended up in filth. By every human measure, he deserved rejection. Yet his return was met not with judgment, but with joy. The father did not wait at the gate with a list of accusations. He did not scold him with, "I told you so." He ran, he embraced, he restored. This truth transforms us because it dismantles the lie that we are too far gone. No matter the addiction, no matter the betrayal, no matter the ruin, the Father's arms are always open. The transformation here is that guilt no longer defines us. Grace does. Now turn to the older son. His story teaches us that pride is just as dangerous as shame. He obeyed, he worked, he stayed, yet he missed the joy of sonship. His bitterness chained him outside the feast. The Father went out to him too, not with anger, but with invitation. This truth transforms us because it shatters the illusion that our good works earn us favor. Many live their lives believing they must prove their worth through service, obedience, or success. Yet the Father says, "You are already mine. All I have is yours." The transformation here is that performance no longer defines us. Relationship does. Both sons reveal two paths that lead to the same lostness: rebellion and self-righteousness. Both are forms of running away, one outward, the other inward. Both leave us empty. But both are met with the same Father who runs and who walks, who restores and who invites. This is the transformational truth. God's love is not conditioned by our past, nor calculated by our performance. It is given freely, and it restores completely. And this is where the story demands a decision. Jesus ends it without resolution for the older brother because he places the choice in our hands. Will we step into the feast of grace, or will we stay outside in pride? Will we allow ourselves to be embraced, or will we cling to resentment? The parable is unfinished because your life is its continuation. Every day you write the ending. Every day you choose whether to enter. This truth reshapes how we see ourselves. Too often we live as if God is distant, waiting for us to get our lives together before He will accept us. Too often we hide our failures or polish our obedience, thinking one will disqualify us and the other will impress Him. But the parable breaks both illusions. The father does not love the younger son because he cleaned himself up. He does not love the older son because he worked harder. He loves because he is love. The only requirement is to receive it. This truth also reshapes how we see others. We are quick to judge the rebels, to point at those who squander their lives in foolish choices. We are quick to resent the broken who return to God and are celebrated. But if the Father embraces them, who are we to refuse? And we are quick to elevate the faithful, the dutiful, the ones who never stumble, forgetting that pride can be as deadly as rebellion. The parable transforms our perspective by teaching us that all are in need of grace and all are invited to the same feast. And this truth reshapes how we see God. He is not the angry taskmaster waiting to punish. He is not the indifferent figure counting our failures. He is the Father on the horizon, scanning the distance for our return. He is the Father running with abandon to cover our shame. He is the Father who leaves the celebration to call us out of our bitterness. His love is patient, relentless, scandalous, and unstoppable. And once we see him as he is, we cannot remain the same. The transformational takeaway is this: your life is not defined by how far you have run or how long you have served. It is defined by whether you will let the Father embrace you. The robe, the ring, the sandals, the feast, all of it is waiting. But you must choose. Will you stay in the far country? Will you linger outside the house, bitter and cold? Or will you step into the celebration of grace? The story has been told for 2,000 years because it is still being lived every day. Somewhere, a prodigal is waking up in shame, wondering if there is a way home. Somewhere, an older brother is standing outside a house filled with joy, arms crossed, unwilling to enter. And somewhere, a father is watching, waiting, running, inviting. Which one will you be? That choice is the transformation. That choice is the takeaway. That choice is the end of the story that only you can write. The parable of the prodigal son does not leave us comfortable. It is not a sweet bedtime story to soothe us into forgetting ourselves. It is a piercing light that forces us to face the deepest realities of our own hearts. That is why Jesus told it. He wanted his listeners, and now you and I, to stop hiding behind excuses and to finally see ourselves clearly. The younger son's story is not about a boy from long ago. It is about anyone who has run into the world believing freedom is found away from God. Perhaps you know that feeling. The adrenaline of independence, the taste of pleasure, the moment when you believed you had finally escaped all restraints. But then came the emptiness, the loneliness, the gnawing realization that nothing you chased could fill the hunger within. And maybe right now you feel the mud still clinging to you. You carry shame that whispers, "You are not worthy. You have gone too far." The older son's story is not about a bitter sibling. It is about anyone who has served faithfully yet lost sight of love. Perhaps that is you. You go through the motions. You pray, you work, you serve, and from the outside you look strong. But inside, you feel unseen. You compare yourself to others. You measure your worth by what you have done. And you feel anger when grace is poured out on those you think are less deserving. You are close to the Father's house, but far from his heart. And here is the question the story presses on us with relentless force. Where are you standing right now? Are you in the far country, starving for meaning? Are you in the fields, bitter and tired? Or are you at the edge of the feast, hesitating to step inside? The answer matters, because the Father is moving toward you this very moment. He does not stand at a distance with folded arms. He does not demand that you crawl on your knees before he listens. He runs to you in your shame. He steps out to you in your pride. He looks you in the eyes and says, "My child, come home." Picture it now. The Father on the horizon, robes gathered, running with tears of joy. You see his face and you cannot believe it. You begin your confession, stammering words of guilt, but he interrupts with embrace. He clothes you with dignity, restores your place, and calls for celebration. Or perhaps you see him walking into the field where you stand with arms crossed. He does not rebuke you with anger. He reminds you of your place. All I have is yours. You have always been mine. Will you not join in the joy? This is where the parable becomes your decision. It is no longer about the younger or older son. It is about you. The invitation is open. The music of grace is playing. The feast of forgiveness is waiting. Will you walk into the house, or will you stay outside? Will you embrace love, or will you cling to resentment? The story will not finish itself. It waits for you to write the ending with your life. So I ask you directly, what will you do with this moment? Will you let go of the shame that keeps you from running home? Will you lay down the pride that keeps you from stepping inside? Will you let the Father's love define you instead of your past or your performance? The choice is not tomorrow's, it is today's. Do not let this be another story you hear and forget. Do not let this moment slip into the noise of routine. This is your invitation. If you are weary, come. If you are broken, come. If you are bitter, come. If you are proud, come. The Father's arms are open. The table is set. The feast is ready. If this parable has spoken to you, take a step. Reflect on where you are. Speak it aloud. Share it with someone. And if you feel the Father calling you, respond with courage. Pray even now. Father, I come home, not as a servant trying to earn, but as a child receiving love. Restore me. Embrace me. Make me yours. And if this message has stirred something in you, do not keep it silent. Share it with others who are wandering or weary. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell your story of where you see yourself in this parable. You may be surprised how many others are living the same journey, waiting for the same embrace. Above all, remember this: you are not beyond the Father's reach. His love outruns your shame. His grace outweighs your pride. His invitation outlasts your excuses. The only question left is the one Jesus leaves us with. Will you come inside?